July 28 in the year of our Lord 2021. So glad you could be with us tonight. As you know, this program is set aside for you to ask your questions, give your comments on any topic whatsoever. And I, as my role as host of this program, will endeavor to answer your questions to the best of my ability using our Catholic faith, history, the fathers, scripture, tradition, the saints, the doctors, the theologians, the catechisms, the encyclopedias, and just about anything I can find to have you walk away satisfied that your question has indeed been answered. We come to you every Wednesday at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., 2 solid hours of question asking and answering and kibitzing about all the important things of life. Now, as you know, the rules here are you have at least 2 questions to ask, and if you would give the number of your question so that I can know where you are on the charts, and if you would put the word question in capital letters before your question so that I know it's a question, because we get a lot of comments on the board that I can sometimes look at, sometimes not. But the questions I will definitely look at as fast as I can and as diligently as I can. So let me see. We have any news today? Been pretty quiet. A lot of talk about COVID and all that stuff. So don't let that worry you. I think the big question today is, are they going to force the rest of the world to take a COVID vaccine? That seems to be on the top of their agenda. You got to get everybody on board, So who knows what's going to happen from that? This is a real test, not only for the United States, for the rest of the world, because the men in white lab coats, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them, a lot of the bureaucrats, pushing for this vaccine. And as I told you, I already had a friend whose mother died from taking the COVID vaccine. And what a tragedy that was. So, we have no guarantee this thing is safe. We have no guarantee it works. There are some people that got the COVID vaccine, and was it Bill Maher on TV complaining he got the COVID. He didn't have any symptoms, but he got COVID, but he had the vaccine. So figure that one out. And there's many more stories like that. So this thing has an agenda on it from A to Z. So be very careful how you make your decisions, I would recommend. And that's about all I'm going to say. See if there's anything else. We are working on the book. Let me show that to you. I'm still working on it. I found out that I had to reformat the whole thing. The Keys Over the Christian World, the book on the papacy from 33 AD to 855 AD. One of the best you're ever going to find written in the world, all from original sources. How many original sources do we have in there? 2,100 to be exact, I think. 2,100 original. So that's from the original Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, Coptic, Armenian, you name it. All those sources down there from the original documents that we translated. So my friend Scott Butler and John Colarafi, 2 very dedicated Catholic scholars, did this work, and we're publishing it for them. And I have to edit it and format it, but that's going to take a while, I found out. So sorry for that. New products. We have, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but we have the paper that I wrote critiquing the philosophy of Wolfgang Smith. Wolfgang Smith is a friend of mine, so you can see where I'm coming from on this. Friend or foe or anywhere in between. if I feel that there's something wrong with what they're teaching overall, not just a mistake here and there, but and they do that to me. So um, I feel an obligation to tell you about it. It's there. You can read it or ignore it, whatever, but it's there. So I did my job. You can do yours and follow up on that. What else do we have coming up? Yeah, for all you science enthusiasts out there, we have a geocentrism conference coming up. And we thought it was going to be at the golf course, and now that's changed. And so it's back at the home of my good friend, Matt Werner, who lives out in, what is that? Colorado. What is that town? Slipping my name for some reason. Let me see if I have it here. It's just piled beneath some books, so can't get to it right now. Castle Rock, that's what it is. And that is October the 1st and 2nd, 2 days. And I will be out there with my wife. One of the only times she's traveled with me to do a lecture. And we're going to have some entertainment, good food, good surroundings, and a great time of the year, October, first week of October. So if you can make it out there, go to our website. You'll see the registration form that you need to fill out. $50 a head is the best we can do. So please feel free to check that out. What else do we have going on? Again, for you science buffs, Dr. Robert Carter and Dr. Robert Sarfati, Sarfati, Sarfati. I'm not sure what the derivation of that is. Sounds Middle Eastern. They put out a video about 45 minutes long, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And it's about, they're critiquing geocentrism. So yours truly has taken it as one of his tasks to rebut that video point by point, which I'm working on now. And so I will put it up on YouTube as a video, and they will have their say, and then I'll interrupt and we'll come in and give our side of the story on every single point that they mentioned. So it'll be a first for us in the sense that we put it on YouTube, and that seems to be the going way of communication between people is videos, and which means I want to transfer every single thing I've written into a video one of these days. That may take years, but I'm going to do it. As long as I have a breath to breathe, I'm going to do it. So for all you that like videos, this will be a treasure trove of information. Okay, what else is going on? Francis, I haven't heard too much about him since he gave his motu proprio on the Latin Mass, and I did a show on this last week for about an hour. I gave you my feelings of it. My feelings run a lot deeper than what you might have heard on Catholic media, because I went into the whole mentality that brought us to this point, from pre-Vatican II to Vatican II and afterwards. And the liberals have just made a mess of the Catholic Church. They have just turned it upside down. And they've been working on this for the last since the late 1880s or so. Well, even before that, probably a decade or so before that. And it's interesting. but I find that as soon as Gregory the 16th took Galileo's name off the index of forbidden books, him and Copernicus took them off the index, just willy-nilly, no explanation. Then the avalanche started to tremble in the 1940s, 50s, and then you had Darwin coming along in the late 1950s, and then you had all the Catholic liberals promoting evolution. The church was trying to fight them tooth and nail in the late 1800s. She did a pretty good job, actually. The church did. But then the avalanche just got bigger, and by the mid 20th century, I don't think there is a creationist in upper academia in the whole Catholic Church. If there is, you can count them on one or two hands. So anyway, they started their little trek back in the 1800s with, Teilhard de Chardin and all these people who followed him, and it affected every aspect of Catholic life, from worship to doctrine and everywhere in between. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. And it all goes back to how you understand Scripture. Scripture inspired by God in all that it says, or just in some of what it says. And they took the sum of what it says and ran with it. And so everything was open game after that. Scripture was not an authority on anything outside of the strict bounds of salvation. So that's what caused it all. Okay, most people, I don't think, realize that, but that's the case. I've been studying Scripture for 45 years now, and I can tell you that is what the source is. Of course, the source is the devil. Okay, but what vehicles does he use? That's the next question. And Scripture is one of those. So anyway, I gave my piece on Pope Francis, and this may be his swan song. However, he may have tried to get this in there because he knows his days are numbered. And of course, everybody's days are numbered, but his are more numbered than yours or mine, because he's up to what, in his mid 80s now. So the interesting question is, what are we going to get next? That's the interesting question. If the track record for the last half of the 20th century and into the 21st century is any indication of what we can expect, buckle up, people. It's going to be a rough ride. Hate to say it. I don't mean to be pessimistic at all. I just want to tell you, I don't want to draw any pie in the sky for you. I'm just telling you like it is. Anyway, so we're going to go on to our questions. Enough of hearing me talk. And today, my cursor is really big. Look at that, the size of that thing. And now it won't work. What the heck? Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. After all I went through last week. Let me just see. Okay, there we go. I had to close the advertisement from Facebook that was hanging on the bottom of my little scroll here. And that loosened everything up. Okay. Freemasons hacking my system. No, man, I have every safeguard you can imagine on my computer. I know the second somebody's trying to tag me or trail me or whatever they call it. What do they call it? Forget that technical word they use, but yeah, I got the best equipment. So I know who's out there. All right, so let's start at the top here tonight. Let's see what we got. Pedro says, question, Robert, if planets are not made of reflective material, how can they appear as the brightest objects in the sky? Well, that would be a good question, wouldn't it? It depends on what you mean by reflective material, Pedro. I mean, do you know anything that won't reflect your flashlight light back to you that you shine it on? Think about it. Pick anything that you think is not reflective. The perimeter of my computer screen here is black, but I can see it when the light shines on it. Okay. Anything that I shine the light onto, it's going to reflect back. Okay. So you don't have to have what you call reflective material per se in order to get the light to reflect back into your retina. Okay. It can be made of anything, and the light will reflect back. There are very few substances in the world, and they're usually under the radioactive category, that will take in light and not let any light out. And this is what the black hole is supposed to do. It's supposed to take in light and not let any out. So you can find you could shine your flashlight there all day long, and you won't see any light coming back because it's not reflecting. All you may be able to see is the beam of your light going through the dust or something. But that's about the only thing I know of. So, and a lot of these planets, by the way, are made of very fine grains that are cut, like you would cut a diamond. Okay. I'm not saying they're like a diamond, but they're cut in such a way where they're very angular, and thus they're going to reflect light on that side of their fascia. And it's going to glimmer to a certain extent because it's, fine grains of sand, so to speak. And so that is very reflective. And most of the planets are like that. A lot of them are gaseous, of course, but gas has substance to it, and it has color sometimes. It's not like carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide that you can't see. Okay, there's very few gases that you can't see. Most of them you can. So again, there's plenty of reflective material on those bodies, especially since you're the only one out there capable of reflecting light, because space is, for all intents and purposes, it's empty to our senses. So there's nothing there, or let's just say that whatever is there is absorbing all the light so that we can't see it reflect back from it. We can only see it in a three-dimensional body. Okay, so let's go on. Omar says, I actually really like James White and his debates with Mormons and other false religions. But why do you think he just can't see the Catholic faith as the true faith? I pray for him. And that is an interesting question, because his sister converted to the Catholic faith, 20 years ago? Was it? Was it 20? Yeah, it was right around there. 20 years ago. And, James had a fit and conniption over that. But if you've ever talked to her, I've seen her interviewed, where, very gentle woman. She doesn't have an agenda. She just wants to know the truth. So I can see why someone like her would be very apt to come to the Catholicism, because it's all about truth. And it doesn't take a whole lot to figure it out. Yeah, I think everybody's been trying to find out what's the kernel of James White. What is it that James White has inside of him that we just can't penetrate, that gives him this hateful disposition against Catholicism? I think in his better moments, James has toyed with the idea what would it be like if I became Catholic? Because I'll tell you, he's been in some debates where he has not held his own against Catholic debaters. And it must stick in his craw and bother him that he thought he had all the answers. And then here comes along some new guys and show him, no, not only do you not know all the answers, we got better answers for you. And he's posed with this, and it must make him think a little. But it's like a lot of other guys that I have known in upper academia. There's a saying somewhere, I just saw it last week, that said one of the hardest things to do for a man is to renounce everything that he's been teaching for the last 30 years. Actually, some of you might say, well, no, it's actually easy. Yeah, and I can see that, it is actually easy if you're going the right direction. But if you're not there yet, if you haven't hit that string, you haven't hit that string on the musical instrument that you hear, you go, that's it. You've got the final piece, and you go, oh, how could I never have seen this before? Blah, 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 blah. And before you come to that point, however, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what if I had to become Catholic? What would happen? Everything I ever taught would just be thrown away. My whole reputation will be ruined. My this, my that, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, a lot of guys who have built their whole lives on their careers, that's the question they're going to be faced with. And I'm sure James White has struggled with that. If not, then he's hopeless. So, but look, I've always said this ever since the first time I debated him back in 1995, was it, in Boston? I said, I keep telling people, because they'd be like, how can you put up with James White? Blah, blah, blah. He's so belligerent. He's so this, so that. Yeah. So I said, look, he's the best gift God ever gave to me. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't all wrapped up in nice wrapping paper and pretty bows, but he's still the best gift God ever gave me. Why? Because there's never been anyone who has made me dig as deep as I have dug to find the truth and then write about it. Not by faith alone. 707. Do you think I would have written 775 pages if it wasn't for someone like James White? You say, it was pushing me. He didn't know it, but he was pushing me to go find what the truth was. Does the Catholic Church have the truth? And if you do, can you say it in such a way where it's understandable to people? They can say, there it is, the truth. Instead of all this, sometimes you get caught up in all our Latin stuff that it becomes so obtuse that hardly anybody understands it. Whether you read Thomas or whoever it is, it's sometimes you just go whoosh right over your head. So you have to be able to understand it, and the only way you can really communicate it to people is if you understand it yourself, and that means every single facet of the issue. You have to know every single, and know it like the back of your hand. And then you write, and then you teach, but you have to know. And I don't find that many Catholic apologists who really have a grasp of the whole soteriology of Catholicism. They're few and far between. And I don't know if it's a complicated subject, or there's too many facets they have to think about, or you got predestination and free will, and you got all the phases of justification, all that stuff. It can be pretty cumbersome, but So, at any rate, what I'm saying is, we ought to thank God for people like James White. Okay. Um, yeah, because this is how God works. You know, God's not going to come down and infuse you with knowledge. You're going to work, buddy, and you're going to work hard. And if you really want to get into this stuff, you better be prepared to work real hard and face guys like James White because you can just look at him and just smile. Say, James, I know where you're at. I, I, I sympathize with you. And someday, buddy, you're going to come over. I don't know when, but I feel you're going to come over because a guy as intelligent as you're not going to be able to get away from this too much longer. I would just sit there with a smile on my face and just smile. Whenever he started criticizing Catholicism, I'd say, thanks, James. I'll check that one out. And I will. I'll go home and check it out. So anyway, I think you get the point. And Omar asked another question. What would you recommend someone to do before beginning to read St. Thomas's Summa? What prerequisites do you think someone should have before reading it? Thomas was one of a kind. I don't know. How would I prepare someone to read Thomas? When I was learning how to swim, I was what? I was 10, I think it was. And I was scared of the deep water. I always would play in the shallow part. And we went to camp one year, and this counselor, who was a patient of my father's, my father was a doctor in the town. The counselor was a patient of my father, so he knew me. I mean, not very well, but he knew me. And he made me get on the diving board and said, Sungenis, today you're going to go into the deep end. And I just stood there on that. I just stood there for the longest time on that diving board. And I don't know what overcame me or had overcome me, but he said, you just got to jump, take the dive and jump in. That's all there is to it. And then he said the magic words. Because I said to him, but if I jump, I might drown. And then he said the magic words. He says, all right, do this. As soon as you jump in, I want you to head straight to the shallow end. Better words were never said. I said, oh, that's all I have to do? Yeah, see, because in my mind, the deep end somehow was going to suck me in and not let me go. And easy, I knew how to swim. So all I had to do was get away from the deep end by swimming away to the shallow end. And that's what I did. And that whole rest of the afternoon, I must have dove off that diving board probably 100 times. And I would swim to the shallow end every time. But I could dive off that diving board now. Okay. So with Thomas, same thing. You just got to dive in. Okay. And if you need to go to the shallow end, well, that means you need to stop reading Thomas for a little bit and then go back and dive in again, come out, take a breather, see if you understood what he said, and then go back in and, just keep doing the same thing over. And by the time, after a while, you're going to, get the hang of it. So funny analogy that I would use there, but I don't know why I did, but that came to me. So, because Thomas is like a deep pool. So I guess maybe that's the analogy. But hopefully that will help you. Okay. Hello, people. Sean and Doug. All right. Question from John Button. It's my understanding that Islam denies Jesus' resurrection and divinity. So why does the Catholic Church say we worship the same God? Well, John, this is where you have to be able to make distinctions. You're going to find when you get into philosophy, theology, epistemology, all those ologies, you're going to have to make distinctions. And you have to make them at the right time and for the right purpose, of course, but you're going to make distinctions. And this is one of those cases where we make a distinction between monotheism as a belief as opposed to the details of what makes up monotheism. Okay. What are those details? Well, one's the Trinity. That's a detail. Okay. And in that Trinity, we have this second person of the Trinity dying and rising again. So there's another detail. That's called a distinction. Okay. So if you want to talk about monotheism, that is one God, okay, in that particular circle, yeah, because there is only one God. We don't believe in 33 million gods, do we? Like the Hindus do. We believe there's one God. Okay. And when Paul is writing in his epistle, his Roman epistle, and he comes to these people and he said that the knowledge of God is written in your heart. The laws of God are written in your heart. And not only that, internally, but externally, you can see the creation. And you know for a fact that it doesn't come into existence by itself, despite what Stephen Hawking says. Okay? And if that's the case, then you know somebody bigger and better than you put it there. It's very simple. Okay? So if that's the case, then you're obligated to honor and worship him, Paul says in Romans 1. You know, it's a simple matter of adding 2 plus 2 equals 4. You know, no grand display of intellect do you need to get to that point. It's just plain as the nose on your face, plain as the sunshine every day. So, and when he's talking to them, he doesn't say, oh, and by the way, here's the name of this God, Yahweh Elohim, Jesus Christ. Not necessarily, because a lot of people came and went before Paul ever preached. But they knew God existed without knowing the name of it. Yahweh Elohim, or Jesus Christ. Okay? You don't have to know him by name, because you know he exists. Someday you'll find out his name, and that means you have a much closer relationship with him, but you know he exists without even knowing his name. Okay, so that's where we all start, with that one God. And of course, you got some perversions of that coming along, you know, with the Hindus, and but most of the world religions are, you know, monotheistic. Okay, so in that sense, you can say, okay, we're on the same page. All right, and that's what Paul did in Acts chapter 17 when he talked to the Athenians on Mars Hill. He said, you know, I see all these statues you have, you know, statue to Jupiter and to, you know, Aphrodite and blah, 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 all the way down the line. And then you have this one statue to the unknown God, just in case you miss somebody. Well, that's pretty nice. Nice of you to have a statue for that. But that tells me something about you. And I'm going to fill in the gaps for you. Let me tell you who this unknown God is. So Paul jumped right off of the fact that there was a statue there to the unknown God and started preaching the gospel from that as a starting point, as a melding point, you see. And that's what we should be doing also. Okay. Hey, walk up to your friendly Muslim and say, hey, we both believe in one God, right? Yeah, yeah. So, all right, we got a starting point for a conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about this one God. Okay. And you proceed to tell him. And he either says, oh, tell me more, or, sorry, I got to go worship, toward Mecca in the next hour. Goodbye. You don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get, but there you go. The monotheism that you have is enough to start a conversation. Okay, so that's what you do. All right. All right. Jorn Ringdahl. Sometimes I don't know whether to pronounce those G's or not. Could have been Rinyal or Rindell or Ringdell. I'm not sure. So if I'm murdering your name, please forgive me. All right, question. I am Eastern Orthodox. I have come to believe I should be in the communion with the Pope. Should I convert to the Catholic Church? Now, is that a rhetorical question there, Bjorn? Because you know what my answer is going to be, don't you? Of course you should. And as messed up as it is, we need good people like you. Okay? So yes, please come over and help us. By all means. There should be only one church. Okay, and we have two. And God shows us that, look, if you don't do things right, they can be messed up. That's why you have two churches now. Yeah, there is one that's still superior, but, the other one still has the sacraments, the priesthood, and a lot of other things. And so they're the next viable Christian entity in this world, like it or not. We're split. And, we may have, 75% more people than they do, but still, they're a going concern, no matter how you look at it. And we wish we could all be one. So you do your part. You start it off. Who knows? Maybe a lot of people will follow you. All right, Bjorn, thank you. Amanda Parker says, hello, Dr. Sungenis. What's your thoughts on vaccine passports? It sounds like this will potentially affect every aspect of one's life. Well, let's put it this way. If the powers that be have their way, yeah, they're going to make this vaccine penetrate into every part of your life. Travel, education, going to a store, a restaurant, who knows how far these people are going to take this. It's one of the most amazing attempts at controlling the society I've ever seen in my life. Okay. Taxes are one thing, they intrude into every part of your life, but this is, they're trying to make this stronger. You know how if you don't pay your taxes, then you can't, buy property, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, same thing with the vaccine. They're going to say, you don't take the vaccine, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the other thing. Same thing. It has almost the same power. Okay. So, sociologically speaking, it's one of the most dangerous things I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's that way with the science community split on this. It's like climate change. The scientists that see the climate change as just nothing but a hoax are just totally passed by. They can't get stuff published. They can't get lectures. They can't stay on, Facebook. It's just an all-out assault on anyone who is going against the current zeitgeist. And how bad it's going to get, I don't know. But it's the easier it is for them to do because of all the technology we have, the faster it's going to come. And this is the underbelly of technology, because everything we have ever seen in this world that has been good has been abused by the evil side to use and abuse people. Every single thing. Okay. And I'm talking about money, movies, music, art, literature, philosophy, sociology, psychology, even mathematics, cosmology, definitely, has been used by the other side to control people. Because the more knowledge you have, the more you can control them. And it's getting worse. And the only thing that's happening now is it's happening a lot faster. You know, I was just remarking today. I had to call somebody across the world, and or was that the other day? And I'm talking to somebody in Japan, China, I forget where it was, and we couldn't even dream of that. I mean, literally, we couldn't even dream of it before 50 years ago, or 7,500 years ago. My goodness, we just invented the car, what, in the 1910s, and the radio. Marconi and his, telegraph, what, 1910s was it? 19, just the turn of the century. And here we are speaking to people in China and from the United States and anywhere else. And so you see how fast it's going. And it's accelerating. It's not just moving along, it's accelerating. So the powers that be, as they have always done for the 1900 or, 4,000 years prior, it just wasn't as easy for them before because they didn't have the technology. Now they have the technology, and so it's accelerated, and who knows where it's going to be tomorrow. I feel sorry for my children. I don't know what kind of world they are going to inherit. I have maybe 20 years left, if that, and I can say bye-bye to all this. But the next generation, I fear for them. I really do. So prepare your kids if you have kids. Prepare them, and I don't want to scare you, but I'm just saying prepare them, okay, for any possible future that you see, because if today what they're doing with COVID is any indication of what they intend to do, we're in for some trouble. Okay. And we're going to have to stand up and fight. Okay. I hate that subject. Gosh, I hate COVID. All right. David says, question, what is the number one reason people waste their time attacking the Catholic Church? Depends on who you're talking about, David. Attack can be good or it can be bad. I mean, if you're attacking the church and it doesn't deserve to be attacked in that dimension, then yeah, it's wrong. But if you're attacking the church because, yeah, it needs to have the finger pointed at it so it can clean up its act, well, that's well and good. And thank God we have people courageous enough to do that. Many of our saints have pointed their finger at the Catholic Church because of all the corruption that was in it. In every generation, in every century. Okay. The Catholic Church has barnacles on it that you wouldn't believe. It's a ship, all right, but it's way down. Too much bad cargo, too many barnacles. And so those who point these things out are blessed for doing so. Okay. But yeah, I know a lot of people attack the Catholic Church because they hate the church. You know, they hate anything religious. And if you happen to be a Catholic, you're going to be a target of theirs. So, yeah, so it depends on your point of view whether it's a waste of time or not. Okay, that's my answer. David says, yes, I'm afraid the vaccine will be mandatory very soon. All right, question. If your employer requires a vax and all prospective employers require a vax, what then? Well, you're going to have to negotiate, get a lawyer, and have them stand up for you if you can afford it. Protest, speak kindly to them, whatever way you can, you just bring it to the nth degree. You do everything you can to say, look, I just can't do this. And if they say, well, I'm sorry, then there's the door. You're going to have to face that. Either you take the vaccination or you go out the door. You don't have too many choices other than trying to fight it legally. And I can assure you this, that if they start pushing this thing and start requiring, like Google today, required vaccinations for all their employees. Now, Google is a big name with a lot of money, and they have a lot of power, and they influence politicians left and right. So they're situated very nicely. But I would suspect there are going to be some lawsuits against Google for trying to force vaccinations on people, especially with the low ebb of the COVID virus, even the Delta strain. It's not like it's out of control, you know. Okay, yeah, we have cases here and there. We have influenza here and there. We still do, and always will. You know, there's cases of chickenpox and smallpox and measles, and we got them all over the place. Okay. You know, if they were half as concerned about the health of Americans, they would start talking about heart disease and cancer, which kills 80% of our population. Just those two maladies alone. Okay. But you don't see them talking about that, do you? Oh, hey, if you don't have your arteries clean, you can't work here. You know, if you had a heart attack in the last, you can't work here. Of course, you know, the whole thing is about being contagious. I understand that. Okay, but it's not the incidence of COVID has leveled out to such an extent that the cases we see are the exceptions to the rule, not the rule. And of course, they probably never were the rule, but they're even further away from the rule than they ever have been. Okay, but you see, it's not the COVID, it's the mentality behind it. Okay, it's this herd mentality where we're going to get everybody together and we're all going to be of one mind, you see. I think they're testing us out. They're sociologically testing us out to see how far they will allow them to take us. And if we go along like sheep, they're going to say, wow, this is a lot easier than we thought. They'll march to the tune, whatever tune we play, they're going to march to it. Okay, that's why we got to stand up and fight. So if you're in a situation where your employer says, I would contact a lawyer right away. Now you're going to get some lawyers that say, give it up, Sean. You know, it's like fighting Goliath. Well, we all know what happened to Goliath. But you're taking on a monster. And it might cost you a lot of money. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there might be lawyers out there that might work pro bono for you on a case like this, because it might be a precedent-setting case. You know, you can just read the newspapers. Giant Google goes after small fry employee, you know, with vaccination. And hey, what's going to come of it? Let's take this to court and find out. Okay. And you know what? we should find out once and for all. Instead of all this, in the air, I wonder what they're going to do. Oh, oh, no, oh. Somebody with some money, take it to court, get a judge to make a judgment, and hopefully it's in our favor. But let's get a precedent going. Okay, a legal precedent. That's what we need. You got to fight fire with fire. So some of you good people out there, get on the phone to some of these lawyers, see how far they're willing to go with it. And because what you do for yourself is what you're going to do for somebody else too, because they're going to be in the same situation sooner or later. So you better start now, because this ball is rolling with some speed, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. And don't sit on your hands. Don't think, well, God's going to move it. God's going to do it. And no, that's not the way it works. Okay, you ought to know that by now. God's not going to move until you move. And when you move, God's going to bless you. But you sit on your hands and think that, oh, well, I'll just pray it away. That ain't going to happen. Pray, yeah. But you better get out there and do something. Go see I don't have to worry about it because I'm self-employed. Okay, so that's what I'm telling you to do it. But that's what you got to do. You're going to have to get out there. Somebody has got to look what they did with the abortion thing. We have a case going before the Supreme Court that may decide on Roe versus Wade. Can you believe that? After how many years? 45, 46, 47 years? My goodness. 48 years. So, stranger things have happened. So if they can get some discussion about Roe versus Wade, you can sure get a discussion about vaccines and whether they have to be mandatory. They would only do mandatory, like if, the whole population was dying, then they would do mandatory, because, hey, let's just throw the thing to the wind and nothing else we're doing is working. Let's try the vaccine. Okay, I can understand that. The whole population's dying left and right. Yeah, let's do something. Okay, because nothing else seems to be working. But we're not in that situation. Not even close. Not even a smidgen close. Okay? This thing, COVID, came and went like every other virus, influenza, whatever it is, and they come back and then they go again. It's just the nature of the world. Okay? So somebody has to have some sense to see this. There's some smart lawyers out there. And, they might be able to make a big name for themselves. Who knows? Taking on the Google giant. Little Mary Schwartzletter, is fighting Google because she was threatened to lose her job if she didn't get vaccinated. Headlines, New York Times. Lawyers would love to see their name in print on that. So who knows? You might find, you look long enough, you might find somebody that's going to do that. But that's the way you got to go in this world. Okay? All right. Let's see what else we have here today. All right. So Gage Livington says, question, quote, this is from the Council of Trent, session 6 on justification. And he's quoting which says, none of those things that precede justification, whether faith or works, merit the grace of justification. What exactly does that mean? Does baptism merit justification? All right. Baptism is the means by which justification is brought to you. Okay, so you get baptized by water, and you need the water, and then you need the baptismal formula, and that is the vehicle God has chosen to cleanse your soul. which is justification. Okay. What Trent means here is you can do nothing to earn your justification on a legal basis. Now, if you want to know the full-blown story of that, you can get my book, Not by Faith Alone. 775 pages. They'll give you every wrinkle about what that sentence you just read means. You thought jumping into Thomas Aquinas was hard. Wait till you jump into Not by Faith Alone. So let me see. I'll say this shortly. You see, we were way ahead of the reformers. I don't know why there was a confusion about this, because the Catholic Church was very clear. Whatever precedes justification, faith, or works doesn't merit, because we can't merit anything with God on a legal basis. And when I say legal, that's the operative word. Legal means you sign a contract with somebody, let's say, okay? And he says, you sign this contract. The contract requires you to work 40 hours per week. At the end of that 40 hours, I will give you $2,000. That's the contract. If for any reason you don't work 40 hours, we will subtract from the 2,000. If you work overtime, we will give you time and a half. Blah, blah, things like that go into a contract. Now, the contract doesn't care whether you like your employer or don't like him. It doesn't care whether you know him or not. I mean, other than signing your name to the paper, pay your name to the contract. It doesn't care what kind of relationship you have. Here is the stipulation. You work, you get paid. What's that called in human society? That's called a legal contract. If for any reason one or the other side breaks that contract, that is, you don't come to work for 40 hours, what's the consequence? You get fired. That's what it says in the contract. Okay. If the employer doesn't pay you the $2,000 after you've worked for 40 hours, what can you do? You take him to court and sue him. Very easy. Okay. So again, it's all legal. Nothing personal about that at all. Now, there could be something personal about it. Let's say you work your 40 hours and the boss comes up to you and says, "Hey, John, I didn't realize you were working here. Nice to have you aboard," because, you live down the street from him, let's say. He says, "Hey, by the way, me and my family are moving from our house that's down the street from yours to another house, in the next neighborhood. And I wanted to know if you could come over and help us move our furniture. That would really be great. We have a lot of the guys coming over. We're going to, have a picnic afterward, have some beer and all kinds of good things." And so you're looking at him saying, "Yeah, that'd be great." So come Saturday, you go over to his house, you move furniture, you're sweating like a dog, and you worked hard for all day long. And does John owe you anything for that? Is there any legal contract between you and John for you to come over and move his furniture? No. You could have said, "Hey, sorry, John, don't feel like doing it. I got some other things I have to do," or whatever. John doesn't owe you a thing. But out of the goodness of his heart, what's John going to do? Well, John's going to say, "Hey, come and swim in my pool, have some beers, have some hamburgers, meet my wife, my kids, all kinds of stuff that you couldn't even pay for if you wanted to get it." John's going to give it to you because, hey, you're his friend and he likes you. Okay. That relationship is totally personal. There's not one legal thing about it. Okay. So Now, let's say that you come back to work the next week and John sees you. Hey, Joe, it was a great party we had on Saturday. Thanks again for moving my furniture. And then he says, by the way, I want you to, if about 10 o'clock, I want you to come down and talk to me in my office. I have something I want to share with you. And I'm not going to tell you what now, but come down and I'll tell you then. Okay, sounds good. So you get down to his office at 10 o'clock, and John says, Joe, you know, I just discovered you've been working here a long time, and we haven't really advanced you to what you deserve to be advanced to. So today, as of today, your new job is, vice president of personal affairs. Who knows? Okay, that's your new job, and your salary has just doubled. And you're looking at him, wow, what did I do to deserve that? Well, nothing except be a good friend to him, you see. John's learned he can trust you, he can depend on you to come over and move his furniture. If you can move his furniture and get up early in the Saturday morning, come over and move his furniture, hey, you're a great guy as far as John is concerned. And John says, you know what? He's probably going to be great in the next job that I give him. I want to give him a promotion. He's going to do great there. He just showed me what kind of character he is in coming over and moving my furniture. So good for you, Joe. You just advanced. And Joe goes home and tells his wife, and they're all happy and everything. So what really happened? Okay, you see, on a personal basis, he had a great relationship with John. Old Joe did. And John rewarded him. John didn't owe him a thing, not one thing. All that contract says is, I'll pay you $2,000 a week for 40 hours a week. That's all it says. Anything over and above that's outside the legal contract. And boy, did Joe get something outside that legal contract. Well, he sure did. He got the raise of his life. He got the promotion of his life. He's just on cloud nine. You see? So when we have faith in works and we get eternal life for that, what is that? That's the reward. God doesn't owe that to us. But he's a kind and benevolent father, just like John, the boss, is. He's kind and benevolent. So if Joe's going to come over and help him with the furniture, John's going to reward him. Not because he owes him, but because he wants him to have these good things. He wants Joe to be happy. Okay? They're all given on a personal basis. But if you try to come to God and say, like the Jews used to do, here's the contract, God. I put in my 40 hours of work. You owe me this money. And what they were doing was saying, well, we put in all our works of the law, and we want our pay. That's eternal life. And especially because we're children of Abraham. We're not like those, wily Gentiles out there. We're the seed of Abraham. We deserve heaven. We did all these works. We deserve heaven. And you know what God said to them? Yep. That's what he said. He laughed in their face. And one thing you don't want to do with God is to come up and say, you owe me something. Because he owes nobody nothing. Okay? That's what Trent means. No faith, no works, no nothing. You come and say, here's my bill, God. Here's my faith and here's my works. You owe me. Forget about it. That's what Trent's saying. Okay? All right. Question, Doug. Why is there such an issue if it works like vaccines down through history, like polio and smallpox? And could this be the will of Christ to get it? Anything's possible, Doug, but all the evidence is pointing in the other direction. That's the problem. Okay. In this capitalist society, you had 4 companies vying to create the vaccine so they can make more money than the other. And vaccines usually have to go through a 4-year trial, and this one got cut down to less than a year. Uh, and you're asking me to take this thing? Considering the history of vaccines. And then when they had this big fight against hydroxychloroquine, I mean, the ad campaign they had against that was so revealing because it was so ridiculous. Because they weren't going to make any money off of it. You could buy hydroxychloroquine by the gallon for pennies. Okay? So the pharmaceutical companies weren't going to make any money off of that. Why do you think they try to discourage you from taking pharmaceuticals that are generic? Because they're a tenth of the price. That's why. Okay, it's all about money. Or at least a lot of it. Okay. The hype that was surrounding this whole thing, right in the middle of the Trump election. It was like it was laid in their lap to blame all the. Trump was damned if he did and damned if he didn't with this COVID thing. Nothing he could do was ever right as far as they were concerned, and they just used it to the hilt. So you had all the political machinations behind it. You got the money, the politics, and where those two go, there's always trouble. Politics and money, there's always trouble. I mean, if history hasn't taught us anything, it should teach us that. So we at least have to be suspect, okay? See, when you now I know your question is very, it's very gentle, very well put. But when we ask questions like that, could it be Christ wanting us to get it? It's like, here's what Christ wants you to get. You are in deep sin. And if I have to anything to say about COVID, I want to dump it on you like nobody's business. If it was in Christ's charge, in other words, if it wasn't just nature taking its next step. Because, I mean, look at this world. Every country practices abortion. Every country is allowing homosexual marriages, homosexuality. Okay, contraception. There's divorce, 60% now. You have these step families that are falling apart. Kids are being abused by their stepfathers. All kinds of stuff is going on. And you think Jesus is worried about COVID? Oh my, it's like, let's put things in perspective here, okay? All right, Clinton says, hi, Dr. Sungenis. At this time of year, Pope Francis tends to emphasize sharing and downplaying the multiplication of loaves and fishes. Do you think this is modernism or is it too ambiguous? So he did do something this week. I knew it. Pope Francis never fails us. Always gives us some talking points. Oh, excuse me, people. I'm just, I get to that laughing stage of the condition of the world. I don't know if that's good or bad. Yes, Francis, on cue. If you are going to be a liberal, card-carrying liberal, this is your MO. You attack the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. This is what they do. This is their favorite one, by the way. This walking on water is second. In other words, Jesus didn't really walk on water. It was just shallow water. And, he's actually walking on the sand, but shallow water. And the apostles made it look like he was walking on water to enhance Christianity, to get it to sell. So, they're salesmen. these apostles. They have to sell Christianity to the world. So, what better way than to make it look like Jesus was doing miracles? You know, just from his will. I want to walk on water. I want to walk on water. Okay. It's like it's like today. My wife was telling me about um, the book Butler's Lives of the Saints. I don't know if you've ever read that or not. I had never read it. I just didn't find the time to pick it up. I might have read a page or two, but I didn't get the gist of what she was saying. She was telling me that Butler will go through the saints and he will give you the legends of these saints, what they were purported to have done, what they, now I'm not saying it's all false, I'm just saying what they were purported to have done during their lives. And Butler will chime in and say, yeah, but that's not true. So there'll be a legend that they did some spectacular thing, and Butler will say, yeah, but that's exaggerated. That's going too far. That never really happened, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of funny because I had always told her that. I said, don't believe everything you read about the lives of the saints. I mean, they were good people. They did a lot of good things, but you can't get away from the legends and myths around their lives that people built up. This was the way they used to talk, as a matter of fact. And the old telephone game. You say one thing, and then it goes down the line, and then you hear the end guy, the 10th guy down the line, and it sounds a lot different than what was first told. Well, that's just the nature of life. At any rate, these liberals relish in doing that. Legend and myth are their two favorite words. You'll find that all the time in their literature. And that's how you break down this stronghold of Christianity and make it something just normal. All the miracles, all the prophecies, all that's just myths and legends. Okay? Genesis 1 and 2, myth and legend. The flood, myth and legend. David and Goliath, myth and legend. Jesus multiplying loaves and fishes, myths and legends. Okay? Yeah, it's their biggest category that they have in their arsenal. Myths and legends. And Francis is right from their school. He's a liberal Jesuit. I don't know one Jesuit that's a conservative. Not one. Okay? And I've dealt with a lot of them. So I do know one. Yeah, I do know one. Father Pacwa at EWTN. That's about it, though. That's about it. So welcome to the club, Clinton. Okay. All right, Robert Mazzotta. Or Mazzotta, I guess. I hear two explanations of the sons of God and the daughters of man and the Nephilim and giants, etc. Were the sons of God followers of the Lord or fallen angels? The sons of God were the followers of the Lord. Okay. There are no fallen angels that come down to earth that go into the daughters of men. Okay. That's all. Now, you want to talk about myth and legend? There you have one right there. Okay. But you can still take the passage literally because the sons of God refer to those in, say, Genesis 4:26. It says, men began to call on the name of the Lord. It says in Genesis 4:26, 2 chapters before all this hoi polloi about the Nephilim and stuff. So we know, excuse me, we know that there was already a group, the sons of God, that had formed prior to Genesis chapter 6. Okay, again, Genesis 4:26. Men began to call on the name of the Lord. Okay, you have to excuse me. I have allergies from the pollen that just won't go away. It's been here since May. It is now turning August, and it's still here. I don't think it has any intention of leaving, but it just makes havoc of my throat and nasal passages. So what happened was the daughters of men, that's the phrase that means daughters of those who were not following the Lord. Okay, that's all it means. And they intermingled. They married, in other words. And you know what happens when you do that? Yeah, your whole society starts falling apart. That's what happened to Solomon. Married foreign wives. He had 300 wives, 700 concubines. And the next thing we read about is him falling into apostasy. Same kind of apostasy that we read about here in Genesis 6. They all fell away from the Lord because they were intermingling in their marriages. And it got so bad that the flood came in that very chapter. God says, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. You're going to have 120 years left, and then the flood's going to come and wipe you all out. And we know from that time to 120 years later, none of them repented. So, it got really bad. Once that ball starts rolling, man, it's hard to stop. These are called men of renown. The giants, they're called giants in those days, men of renown. Well, this is nothing more than them saying that these are the Hollywood stars of the day. These are the super athletes. These are the Olympic athletes who can put a ball in a hole faster than you can say basketball, or can swim a lap faster than you can say lap. And these are the stars, the renowned people of the world, and that's why they're called stars. We look at the stars. We look to them for models and for good things and good looks and everything good. We want coming from these people. These are the men of renown. They had those back in those days. Men of renown, the giants. Not the San Francisco Giants, but the Giants. Big people. Famous people, popular people, intelligent people, rich people. The stars of the world. That's what they had back then. And you know what that all leads to, of course. It leads to sin. Yeah, sexual sin, adultery, you name it. They run the whole gamut when they get that high up in life. Look at the National Enquirer. When you go shopping and you see the National Enquirer, or they got about a half a dozen of them now, looking into the personal lives of these people. It's amazing how they build them all up and then they try to crash them all down, because it all makes news. Whether they're going up or going down, it all makes news. But that's what you're reading here in Genesis chapter 6. It's like you were opening up the National Enquirer. You're reading about all the exploits of these people. How crazy their lives are. That's what it's talking about. And let's understand, there's no room for giants here, for physical giants. There's just no room for them in the context. It's not what it's talking about. People like that because it just tingles their senses, but that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the condition of the world right before the flood came. It's like the condition of Sodom and Gomorrah right before God sent fire and brimstone to kill them. Same thing. That's what it's giving you. Okay? All right. Spence Dangles. Let's see what he has to say. Do you think Catholic apologists are trying to be too rational in their approach? That is, trying to say the faith is so rational, yet things like the Trinity, Eucharist sound crazy to most people. Good point, Spence. I have to agree with you in a certain way. Um, let's put it this way. I think each of us try to do our best because we know Christianity is a rational religion. Look, it's very simple. God made you for a reason to live with Him and enjoy Him forever. That's it. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, here's the path I want you to follow. We tried it, we failed. God stepped in and said, all right, try it this way. So that's what we're doing now. Okay. So that we can live with Him forever and enjoy Him forever. Okay. So that's pretty rational, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing more to it than that. Okay. So, how hard can that be? But it just so happens to be that since He's the highest thing that there is, that exists, He's a little bit more complicated than we might think. Okay. Yeah. So we got this thing called the Trinity. So who cares? It wouldn't matter to me if God was a Trinity or just one. Doesn't matter. Okay. What's the main reason I'm here? To get to heaven, to be with God and enjoy Him forever. That's it. Okay. So, if God wants to say, well, look, here's how I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to actually come into this wafer, take out the bread, and replace the bread with my substance. You eat it, and it will help you in your spiritual life to get to heaven, to be with me forever, enjoy me forever. All right, I can accept that. I don't understand it, but I can accept it because the whole plan is rational. These things about the Trinity and Eucharist, okay, a little hard to understand, but you're the one who's given it to us. You're the one who said it. I'm sure you can back it up. Okay. If not, then I don't want to be with you forever. Okay. To be blunt about it, if He can't back up the Trinity and the Eucharist, what good is it going to be with them? Okay. So I just assumed that He's got it all figured out. And there's no problem. He didn't lay that burden on me. I want you to figure out what the Eucharist is before you take it. And when you reach that level, okay, then you can come into the party. Well, yeah, I can understand a little bit, but I have no idea how, the substance of one thing can replace the substance of another. I just, concept to me. So I accept the concept because you told me. If you hadn't told me, I would have never accepted it. Okay. Now that's being rational, that I'm going to accept it on the authority of the guy who created it instead of depending on me to understand it all. Okay. Just like I don't understand the Trinity. I can use big words like, oh, 3 persons in one God. Yeah, to a certain extent, that might capsulize it for you, but that's not going to give you everything you need to know. You don't know the real depths of substance to what is being said about the Trinity. I don't know anybody who does. Even old Thomas Aquinas. Okay. So we don't have to understand all that stuff. All we have to believe in is the guy who gave it to us. I'm sorry, guy. It's not guy. It's the God who gave it to us. And it's all done. It's all done. You put your faith in Him. That's all that's required. That's pretty rational for things I don't understand, right? Okay, so there you go. Hope I helped you out, Spence. All right, question. In case you missed it previously, what are your thoughts about vaccine? Okay, I already got that for you, Amanda. No, that's all the whole poor bowl of wax. if they're going to want passports, somebody's got to fight this in the courts. That's what I said. Okay, whether it's losing your job over COVID or you can't travel abroad because of COVID. If you don't want to take the vaccine, take the chance. The next best thing is to get a lawyer to fight it for you in the courts, because that's the only place it's going to make a difference, if it makes a difference. Okay, that's what I had said. Arnold says, okay, we got a half hour left now. What do you make of these cities that are going to make vaccinations mandatory? All right, so I've already covered COVID. I'm not going to talk about it anymore tonight because, like I said, I hate COVID. I hate to talk about COVID. So I've given you all my wisdom on it. All right. David says, what is your take on Canon 87 allowing bishops to pass? Excuse me. The pollen is killing me. Allowing bishops to bypass the Pope's latest edict on the TLM. Canon 87 in the new Code of Canon Law? Well, brother, let me take a look. What did I do with it? I had it. Okay, here it is. Canon 87, huh? Let me see. You're the first one to bring that up, David. I'm surprised I haven't heard this before. Okay, Canon 87. Under dispensations, a diocesan bishop, whenever he judges that it contributes to their spiritual good, is able to dispense the faithful from universal and particular disciplinary laws issued for his territory or his subjects by the supreme authority of the church. Well, he is not able to dispense, however, from procedural or penal laws, nor from those whose dispensation is specially reserved to the Apostolic See or some other authority. See, there's where it gets a little squishy. Let me read paragraph 2. If recourse to the Holy See is difficult and at the same time there is danger of grave harm in delay, any ordinary is able to dispense from these same laws, even if dispensation is reserved to the Holy See, provided that it concerns a dispensation of which the Holy See is accustomed to grant under the same circumstances, without prejudice to the prescript of Canon 291. 291, let's see what that says. All right, let me read one more of these and then we'll see what the deal is. 291, apart from the case mentioned in Canon 290, note 1, loss of the clerical state does not entail a dispensation from the obligation of celibacy. All right, that's another subject. All right, so let me read Canon 87, and I assume you mean paragraph 1, right there, David. A diocesan bishop, whenever he judges that it contributes to their spiritual good, is able to dispense the faithful from universal and particular disciplinary laws issued for his territory or his subjects by the supreme authority of the church. He is not able to dispense, however, from procedural or penal laws. All right, procedural, see, we have to define what that means. Procedural. What would that be in the case of the Latin Mass? Penal laws, yeah, I mean, that's if you break the law and you're going to be punished for it. But procedural, I'm not sure what they mean by that here. Nor from those whose dispensation is specially reserved to the apostolic see or some other authority. See, that's the killer right there. Nor from those whose dispensation is specially reserved to the apostolic see, because that's what they'll claim. They'll claim that the practice of the Latin Mass is specially reserved to the apostolic see. That's why Benedict the 16th could give you some more pontificum, because that judgment was based to the apostolic see. Okay, so I don't think they're going to get anywhere with it, based just on that. Okay, on that exception. I think what the code is talking about here are emergency situations where the bishop says, this particular practice is not good for my church. I'm going to, I'm going to act in lieu of the Holy See for the benefit of my people. But he realizes when he says that, that sooner or later, his decision for his particular diocese, is going to come under the scrutiny of the Holy See. If not now, then later. Okay? Any bishop who doesn't know that doesn't know church protocol. It's going to come under the review of the Holy See, sooner or later. Okay? So the Pope might say, okay, Bishop so-and-so, I understand you did this because in the best interest of your diocese that you saw at the time, you said that it's okay for the Latin Mass to be practiced with no restrictions, blah, blah, blah. I understand. Okay. But now things have come to light and the emergency is passed. And now we're talking about, the future of the church and the legitimacy of Vatican II and the new Mass and, just put the whole ball of wax on it, slather it over, make it nice and juicy. And so under reconsideration of these things, I forthwith tell you to rescind your decision for the good of the church. Although I recognize at the time your decision was for the benefit of your diocese, something like that. These guys can play games with words, just like anybody else can. Okay, so unless you got them dead to rights, as the saying goes, I don't think it's going to go very far. They can try it, but yeah, I don't think it's going to do anything. Bruce Roy, is it? Rue? Dr. Sungenis, what do you think happened to the real Sister Lucy? Well, I would say from everything that I can gather from Dr. Chanowski's work, which has been going on now for 3 years? 2 years? Between 2 and 3 years? And Dr. Chanowski is no slouch, by the way. He's a very educated man, and he does good research, and he loves his church. Now, he's a sedevacantist, though. Okay, that I don't respect from him. I understand why he's gone that route, but I can't go there with him. But the work he's done on Sister Lucy, bar none, the best I've seen. Okay, now I'm not saying he has final word, because we don't know yet. We won't know until we get some DNA evidence. But he's done everything but DNA evidence. I don't know what more he could do than get the forensic experts that he has gotten to show by objective scientific evidence. And look, it's not hard to examine a face with a computer. I mean, it's just right there. It's not like you're going to the moon, and examining the surface of the moon. It's right there in front of you. Okay, so you examine hundreds of thousands of faces, millions, and you put them into a computer bank, and you tell the computer, here are the commonalities of this face, that face. Here are the dissimilarities. Here are the focal points. Here are the flash points. Here are this and that. You put all this data into the computer, and then you ask it, is this face the same as this face? And I have no doubt in believing that the computer can say, no, this face is not this face. Okay, even if you take age into account, which they do program these computers with, to take age into account. Okay, and when I did my own study on this, I was just absolutely amazed. I looked at the profiles, not just the frontal face. The profiles of these two women is totally different from the top of the forehead down to the chin. Everything between the two is different on these two women. I'm talking about the one that was pre-1957 and the one that was post-1957. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people on the other side who have a vested interest in promoting Sister Lucy of late as the real Sister Lucy. They have vested so much time and money, it's hard for them to be objective about this. I just had that experience myself when I recently wrote the book on my second book on Fatima that disagrees with my first book, because I didn't take into account all the evidence that I should have in the first book. And I've come to the conclusion that Fatima is over with, that the Fatima prophecies, the consecration of Russia and the conversion of Russia have already been done in the 20th century. Took a long time, but we finally did it. And the only thing left now is a third secret, which is ongoing because it talks about the apostasy of the church. Okay. No, there's a lot of people out there who didn't like to hear that. No matter what evidence I brought forth, they just didn't want to hear it because they have a vested interest in propping up this Sister Lucy, even though she's now dead. That one died in 2005, as the Fatima never being fulfilled. Okay, so when you vested that much time and energy and money, and you're making money on it still, okay, that's another factor. Yeah, there's a lot of influences out there that are not so good, that may be leading you to a wrong decision. And so I think the same thing is true with Dr. Janowski's work. It hasn't been given the credit that it deserves. Okay, even if it's not final yet. I mean, all the breadcrumbs that have been laid down for us to follow lead to one conclusion. The Sister Lucy died a long time ago, and we have had an imposter ever since. Okay, that's a very real possibility. And anybody who discounts it just because, oh, well, we can't have that. No, then they're not to be listened to. If they want to have reservations about it, okay, we haven't gotten the final thing yet. We need DNA, and we would like to wrap this thing up. We'll give him some more money. I'm sure he'd be glad to get it from you to go do a DNA test and knock on a few doors of the relatives to see if he can get it. But to just totally say, oh, this is bunk, that means you have a bias, and a big one. Okay, it means you have a big bias if you're not even willing to look at the evidence. So there we go. All right. Let's see, I got 15 more minutes tonight. Supuede says, question, Dr. says, how confident should I be that God will answer my prayers to heal my mother-in-law from cancer, if miracles are rare and primarily for vindicating God's messenger? You want me to be honest with you, Supuede? I'm not very high. Okay. You can pray for it. God says you can pray for anything. Okay. But his will is what overrides your prayer. Okay. And it may not be God's will. You see, because if we say God will answer any prayer, we say, well, everybody should be out there praying against cancer. And the cancer in that frame of mind of prayer should be obliterated. But it's not, is it? Not even close. Okay. Why is that? Because it's not God's will. Why isn't it God's will? Well, it's not that God doesn't want to cure people. It's just that he's already set the laws for this life. You know, you're going to get sick and you're going to die. And I may cure one or here, one there, but it's going to be the exception to the rule. That's God's rule. That's God's will. That healings are going to be the exception to the rule. Same with praying for somebody's salvation. There's no guarantee they're going to be saved. I've been praying for people for 30 years or more. Okay. And then there's some people I just said a little prayer for and they become a Christian. So you never know. But even in the spiritual side, there's no guarantee that you pray for somebody's salvation that God's going to save them. Okay. There's all kinds of things you don't know about that circumstance that God does know. And so if he does, wow, you have another exception to the rule. Because the rule is they don't convert. That's the rule. Okay. So if you get somebody that does, God bless you. He must, I don't know. I'm not going to go speculate. But yeah, so this thing with prayer, you know, never do we want to inhibit anybody from praying for anything, Jesus says. Okay. But be prepared. When you enter into the realm of prayer, you think just because you pray that somehow God's going to be at your beck and call? No, not the way it works. Okay. But if it's your mother-in-law, don't stop praying for her. Okay. Don't let this be used to discourage you from praying. I'm just telling you to be prepared for what, because that's what you asked me. Okay. What should I be prepared for, more or less? I'm telling you, the odds are not in your favor. Okay. I'm just being very honest with you. All right. So let's move on. Question, how old was Abraham's father, Terah, when Abraham was born? Was he 70 or 130? Yeah, I remember dealing with this. I think he was 70. Now, the question is, how can I verify that for you? I think he was 70 when he was born, and then Abraham left when Terah was 130. Okay. So, I think that's what it is. So God called him out 75. Yeah. I don't know for sure. So I better do some work on that before I give you an answer. But yeah, I remember dealing with that little discrepancy there. It turned out not to be a discrepancy at all. Facebook user says the heart of Joe Biden doesn't reflect light. Remember earlier in the program we were talking about bodies that reflect light. I said I couldn't think of a body that didn't reflect light. A Facebook user. That's an interesting name you have there. Facebook. Did your mom call you Facebook? And user isn't your last name, is it? Yeah, don't be afraid to come on here, Facebook user, and give me your name, okay? Come on. All right. Okay. Question from Omar. Which catechisms do you recommend we stick to and should we avoid? Is there any benefit to having the bad ones? Yeah, because you want to see where the mistakes are being made. I just read yesterday from the Catholic Catechism, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. That's the proper title. 1992, then it was 1994. I think they did another one, 1996 edition. At any rate, I read in there where it says that the Jews can expect a Messiah similar to ours that has the same traits, but it's a little different. I never would, I mean, I didn't know that that was in the catechism. But whoever slipped that baby in there, boy, he had some string pulling capability. I'll tell you that. Well, that came from none other than our illustrious Cardinal Ratzinger, by the way. Who said that the Jewish people wait for a Messiah similar to ours, but not exactly ours. Oh my gosh! See, this is why I say Ratzinger. Tuesdays and Thursdays he was a card-carrying conservative. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday he was as liberal as Pope Francis. You never knew what you were going to get out of him. But so this goes to show you that there are good catechisms and bad catechisms, because by no stretch of the imagination are they infallible. I just went across another one the other day. What was it? I was having to deal with. Was it paragraph 121? Was it? The old covenant never revoked by God, because the old covenant has never been revoked by God. So you got a lot of people running off of this one little statement. Don't bother looking at the context, and saying the old covenant. Oh, that must mean the Mosaic covenant for the Jews. And so according to the way they think, the Jews still have a covenant with Christ. I mean, with God, not with Christ. God forbid we would say Christ, right? Yeah, don't say Christ. Don't say the Jews having a covenant with Christ. Say they have a covenant with God. Yeah, from the Old Testament. Yeah, that'll be safe. All right, so the old covenant hasn't been revoked, and so right away they try to get this covenant for the Jews, and basically I have to give the Catechism credit here, because in the context it's talking about the Old Testament scriptures. It's not talking about covenants between God and the Jews. In other words, the Old Testament scriptures have not been revoked, and thank God they haven't. Because what do those Old Testament scriptures do? For one, they tell us about the end of the world. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah, Ezekiel, Daniel, yeah, they all talk about the end of the world. So good thing they left those in there, right? Because we wouldn't have an end of the world. Those prophecies couldn't be fulfilled if we didn't have the Old Testament unrevoked. Okay? That's what the Catechism is trying to say. Oh, but we've got some real devils in the church today. Yeah, real devils. They'll take statements like the old covenant's not revoked to say, oh, yeah, see, well, the Jews don't have to listen to the gospel of Christianity. They have their own means of salvation. They have their own covenant with God. And when God wants to take care of the salvation of the Jews, he'll do that. But we don't have to worry about it now. That's what they teach now, in case you didn't know it. Yeah. So be careful what catechisms you use. John Harden, his catechism I hear is pretty good. Of course, you got the Council of Trent Catechism. Okay, that's always a good standby. And yeah, I haven't put my time into other ones, so I couldn't tell you. Oh, all right, we have a few more minutes left. Let's see what else we got here tonight. That's right, Doug. Jesus did say that. Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. All right. Facebook user says, James White is a better, he's quoting me now from my debate in 2000. I don't remember saying this, but I probably did. James White is a better friend to me than many Catholics in the church today. And I said that in the 2000 debate, and that was early in my career. Yeah, add 10 years to that, and it's a lot worse. Oh, that's funny. Thank you for bringing that up, Facebook user. Oh, Lawrence, are you trying to get in on the act there? Yeah, I see you, you little rascal. You're probably a Facebook user, aren't you? All right, question. Why do you think it took so long to canonize Saint Joan of Arc? Do you think it was not? Do you think it was to not insult the English? Who knows? This whole sainthood thing has just been damaged beyond repair by Francis's little moves to, canonize the likes of Saint or Paul VI and John Paul II and John 23rd. My goodness. Yeah, that's as much as I want to say about sainthood today. Robert Boylan. Okay, Robert. Question regarding not by bread alone and trogo, the word trogo, Greek word. How do you respond to metaphorical instances of trogo? Aristophanes in clouds and those mentioned in BDAG. You referenced there. Let's put it this way, Robert. Any word can be figuratized or literalized. That's a given because of the nature of language. Okay. So the question is, in the context of John 6, when Jesus goes to this word, trogon, that is preponderantly understood in the literal sense. And we have very few exceptions. And even in those exceptions, we need to go see why he used trogo, trogain, the infinitive, in that particular context of Aristophanes, as opposed to using another figurative word. Was there a play on words? Was there a figure of speech being used? What kind of context did he have? There might be a very good reason why he And you know, some of the times where people will claim that it's figurative, I'll go in there and look at it and I'll go, I don't see any figure there. That's happened a couple of times. I'm not saying it's happening this time. I'm just saying it's a possibility. The first thing you have to do is it really metaphorical? Okay, if it is, then why was it? When even he knows that the word is preponderantly used in the literal sense. And there were times where many Greek words, from classical to Koine, would change meaning. Yeah, change meaning. So we have to take that into account. Is that a possibility? Okay. So before I would ever come to a conclusion, I would want to make sure that these are indeed exceptions to the rule, and there's a reason. We could even think of a reason why they use them metaphorically. Okay. But they're preponderantly speaking, you know, trogo is used as eating, munching, devouring. There's a similar thing that happens to the word baptizen, the word for baptize in the Greek. Baptizen, gosh, I mean, probably 95% of the translation of baptizo, baptizen, bapto, baptismos, I mean, they're all centered around immersion. And that's why a lot of people conclude, especially the Baptists, that baptizen means to immerse. Okay. So when I was doing my study on the etymology of baptizen, I understood their point. I could see they were saying. But then there were other words that would, in the Septuagint, that would be used to translate the Hebrew into the Greek, and it would be bapto or baptizen or whatever. And the context would be speaking about things like overwhelming or dying, not dying physically, but dying like a cloth. Okay. Now, yeah, with a cloth you dye it, you dip it in, you could do that. But you can also put the cloth on a table and you can pour the dye on it. Yeah. Or you can put the cloth in a dish, a long dish, and you can pour the dye in it. And yeah, so you poured it and now it's being immersed, but you poured it on there. Okay. So I was going through all these different nuances to understand the word baptizen, and I would get this idea of enveloping a material substance, but the application really didn't matter. Whether you dipped it or poured it or whatever, as long as the object had been sufficiently engulfed by the liquid, you satisfied the definition of baptizen. Okay, so what do you do with this? Well, what it tells us is that baptizen doesn't mean immerse. It means as if you're going to go down into the water like the Baptists do. That's immerse. It means to go from a higher plane to a lower plane. That's what immerse means. Because you don't immerse upwards or sideways. Okay, but whatever it took to envelop the object with the liquid, that's when baptizen was used. Whether it was poured, sprinkled, immersed, or a combination of the three. That's what baptizen meant. Okay, so here's a nuance to this word that we've been told by the Baptists. Oh, it can only mean immerse, and so that's why they immerse all their people. and that anybody who sprinkles or pours is sinning, basically. So we can show that that's not true, etymologically speaking. Okay. Troge may have the same kind of thing. Okay, where Aristophanes is using it in the sense of, I chewed the life out of them. What's he really saying? He's saying, I defeated them. Okay, so in that sense, you could say trogo is being used metaphorically because it's the end product is that he defeated his enemies. But in order to get to that place, he said, I chewed the life out of my enemies. I trogoed the life out of my enemies. Well, their trogo still means chewed. Okay. But people will turn it into a metaphor because of the result of the chewing. And they'll say, well, Aristophanes used it metaphorically. I've seen that a lot. Okay, I tell you, it's not unusual. And I would bet you that's the case with Aristophanes. Where he says, I chewed the life out of my enemies, or, whatever. So you do some metaphorical statement with trogo. Okay, words are funny that way. And so, all right, enough of that. I'm over time. So, sorry, folks. So you're going to have to come back next week. Sorry I couldn't get through. It looks like I only got through a third of the questions here. I'm very sorry. Gosh, I figured 2 hours I could get through some of this stuff faster. Bird of Life. I just saw your. How do you explain Matthew 19:9 doesn't allow divorce and remarriage? All I can tell you, Bird of Life, if you want to know the ins and outs of that, how the Catholic Church gets to their conclusion, get my Matthew commentary. I have a commentary on both Matthew 5 and Matthew 19. Pages long, probably a dozen pages long. I've been told by one of my patrons it's the best analysis of the divorce and remarriage issue in the Catholic Church that he's ever seen. Okay, and I put a lot of work into it, and that work stems over almost 40 years. Okay, so if you want it, it's there for you. Okay, I don't have time to answer it tonight. Yeah, I wish I had more time, guys, but I am dead tired. It's been a long day. So come back next week, and I'll be glad to help you again. I'll try to go a little faster. I know I got caught up with a lot of anecdotes tonight, but I'll try to minimize those next time. All right. So we'll see you, August the 4th? August 4th, Wednesday, 8 o'clock. All right. God bless you all. Thank you for your questions. And if you could, please stop by robertsongenis.org. Take a look at our selection of books, CDs, DVDs, papers, movies, you name it, we got it. And if you could, special request. I was told that I should do this, so I'm going to do it. And that is, I need your monthly support. Okay? Need your monthly support. How else could I say it? I need your monthly support. So, we have a special little place that Lawrence has created for us on our website, up in the upper left-hand corner. If you want to give on a monthly basis, we'll set it all up for you. You don't have to worry about it. It goes right through PayPal. And $5, $10, something. Okay, let me know you're out there. Let me know you care. Okay. I put a lot of work into this for you. And I put a lot of work into everything else I do for you. So, as Paul says, a laborer is worthy of his wages. And you are my employer. I may be self-employed, but you're my employer. So, because I don't get it from any place else. I can guarantee you that. So if you would, if everybody would just be so kind as to do a monthly $5, it's all you got to start with. It's not much. Come on, man. You can buy a McDonald's hamburger for $5. Or $10, something like that, that's all. Okay. Now you don't usually beg like this, but life is real. I try to give you real life when I give you your answers. Real life requires me to have some substance to keep on going. So, all right. And that's all I'm going to say. So I will see you next week. Thanks for coming. God bless you all and your families. Stay true to the faith.